Hello, puppies and kittens. We're interviewing another author today. This is Gabe Stroup. Am I saying that right?
It's true.
Okay, Stroup. All right.
Yeah.
And you wrote The Missing Branch. And
Yes.
I don't remember, it was months ago when we first talked about doing this. I don't remember the way that you described what that was about. So can you fill everybody in?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. I'm a first-time author. First-time author, but I've been a long-time graduate student in environmental science, and this book in particular is kind of inspired by my interest in paleoanthropology. It's part of a longer novella series um, that asks questions about how AI technology could be used as a way to help conservation. It's heavily inspired by Michael Crichton's work. So if you like those kind of hard science fiction stories, it's really inspired by his work. This book in particular is the fourth installment, although you won't need to read the whole series for it.
I was going
Um,
to ask, why is it book four? If
right,
you're a
yeah,
first time author, is it like when you start with Star Wars Episode 4 as the first movie?
yeah, kind of. Well, yeah, when I first envisioned the series, I started with one story and it just kept expanding on it. It's one of those things where you start one story in a world and then you realize all other kinds of ideas that you can put into it, and then it just expands on, and it ended up expanding to a five-part series. But I tried my best to make each installment kind of self-contained, so that it won't you won't need to read every book in the series. Although it helps with the lore and everything. But yeah,
Okay. Well, I got to caution you right away. I'm not personally a big fan of AI.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
I can understand that. Yeah, yeah. Um, uh, I try to take a little bit of a balanced approach for AI because uh, it's like at the end of the day, it's a tool, right? And it's you can have people misuse the tool or use the tool if they use it at all, they can use it responsibly, right? Um, and that's kind of been
Use
in
responsibly.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like any other recreational thing as well. Like anything can be taken to an extreme extent if it's not used responsibly, right? Um, that's a big thing for a lot of my stories. I try to ask questions about if AI was to be used, could it be taken to this extreme?
Well,
That
I'm a little confused because you mentioned stories. So, I mean, are we
mm,
talking about a fiction that's presenting an idea like classic sci-fi?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I call it classics grounded. My science fiction is really grounded in as much reality as possible. I noticed there's a little bit of a gap in the market where you either have really contemporary stuff. There's no fictional or speculative elements, and then you have the really high fantasy science fiction stuff. And I try to find somewhere in the middle, kind of like how Michael Crichton kind of played with a lot of scientific ideas in his fictional narratives. The narratives are technically fictional, but he drew a lot of inspiration from real life scientific principles, and I try to follow that example.
Okay. So, do we talk then about, I mean, there's no reason to go into the story, I would guess. Are we talking about the premise of the story and like how AI can be used for, I don't know, anything positive?
Sure, sure. I mean, I can get into some of the premises of this particular book. So the whole series in general revolves around this simulation program, this AI guided simulation program. And this simulation program was originally designed to use paleontological data and render it in this 3D full fidelity landscape. That was this original idea I had that kind of guided this whole series. And this particular book um, looks into what would it look like if we as humans saw fully rendered non-human primates that actually have all these human-like qualities, and the speculative fiction comes in for characteristics that don't necessarily are aren't necessarily preserved in the fossil remains that we have. I This particular book goes into some. I want to say they're really grounded, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But ideas about how certain behaviors, could have been seen in these extinct primates that only we currently um, preserve. Um,
Okay, so you said you have a degree in paleoanthropology.
no, I don't have a degree, not in paleoanthropology. I'm getting my master's in environmental science.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you said you had an interest in paleoanthropology.
Yes.
Have you been on any digs or anything that you can claim like that?
No, no. I did take a biological anthropology course in my undergrad.
Okay.
Um,
Well, one of the things that I notice when you study paleontology, well, let's put it this way: when you study zoology, you find out that there's a hell of a lot more animals out there
oh yeah,
than anybody. And I know it's pronounced zoology; it's just a force of habit.
yeah.
Um,
I get that.
Aluminium, bitches. Um, anyway, when you study zoology, you find out there's a whole lot more animals than you would have thought, than
Oh
you
yeah.
could have thought. And then when you study paleontology, then you find out that all the animals we have now ain't shit compared to what we used to have.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So one of the conceptual problems that I have in dealing with creationists, who I usually argue with, is that their understanding of paleofauna seems to be limited to a few plastic pieces in a prehistoric playset.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
they think there's like what, those 10 or 12 animals and that's it.
Hmm.
But there's so many thousands of fossil species, and when we get into humanity or homoenes, if we can be a little bit more broad, I mean, let's say closer to us than chimpanzees. Well, people don't understand that they think there's us and there's chimpanzees, and that we came from chimpanzees. They don't even know about the precursors to any of them,
Yeah.
the basis of any of these clades. So they've no idea that there are hundreds of individuals from each of more than a dozen different species. And you were just talking about distinct species, but
Hmm.
there are so many instances. If we had time travel, let's say, chronotourism, we go back and meet a handful of, say, Homo erectus in Indonesia or Homo erectus in Western Europe. Yeah, if you were to meet these people, you could compare and see how different these cultures would be, but you would also think of them as human, even though, as you said, they are distinct species. They are different than us, and they're different from each other in important ways. I mean, there's more differences within that group than between that group and us. And so that challenges a lot of people's conceptions about what an intermediate species should look like.
Oh yeah. Yeah. In fact, the reason I got into fiction writing specifically is to help bring perspective to a lot of people who aren't they're either not interested in it, or perhaps they've been scared away from really seeing the amount of biodiversity that you and I are aware of. And and even then we only have a very small perspective. And as evolved animals, we aren't necessarily equipped to even fully appreciate what, not only like the history of the earth, but the history of our own species. um, and so, like, the great thing about fiction is that uh, we can meld a lot of real life concepts and ideas into fictional narratives that really make it more accessible to the average reader. That's been a big motivation for my kind of writing. um,
Well,
yeah.
without having read the book myself, I think I don't know how much more I could say about it other than asking you to promote it in the most appropriate manner you think you can.
Sure, sure. I have some notes on the side here I can skim
Okay.
through. Um, so, yeah, so the premise of my series goes to the biosphere. It centers around a simulation program called the Ouroboros, like the snake that's eating itself. And in my lore, it's originally designed for paleontological research, and that but over time it gradually evolves into a public entertainment tool, and then it eventually becomes a an instrument for conservation work. And I kind of drew some inspiration for for this from how a lot of today's accredited zoos and aquariums evolved from in this kind of similar path. Um, and of course, the digital creatures within these simulations also evolve in their own way. Um, and this book in particular is unique in the way that it's presented like a dossier, where it challenges the reader to read these decrypted files and in order to piece the narrative together. Like most of my other books are written in the traditional third person limited style, but I wanted to use this book as a way to showcase different perspectives. I have different characters that have different personalities, and I use this kind of format to show how different characters are reacting to what they're seeing in the simulation. Um, and then I also formatted in a way that it's like the simulation itself is outputting certain data points, and you as the reader are able to read the data points yourself and connect some dots to see what it could possibly mean. um, i wanted to I wanted to break away from that passive reading formula and create something that helps keeps a reader engaged and helps reinforce the concept of like these creatures are acting really strangely. They're almost acting like uh, animals that would have contributed something to our gene pool, even if they're extinct now. Um, uh, I think,
I had a question about you. You said most of your other books, but you also said you're a first time author.
yeah. Well, like, I mean, this is my first year authoring, but my books so far have been part of a series. You know, like
How many books have you written?
let's see. Uh, I got
And am I
one.
understanding you see you just started authoring this year, and
Yeah,
yet you've already written multiple books.
yeah, because I have a system where I start drafts, I continue drafts, I end drafts almost all at the same time. So depending on how much free time I end up getting between working full time and being a student, progress
I,
can rack up depending
I
on
gotta
where
throw in an anecdote here, but because it just reminds me of what you're saying.
I am.
I had a night shift job when I was working for this corporation for
Mhm.
14 years, and for a while, for a couple of years out of that, I was on a night shift where I had like nothing to do. There was no calls. I'm just sitting there doing reading and writing and researching and that sort of thing. And I remember that a friend of mine that had become a minister in a young Earth Christian school uh, had tried to get me to read Job Martin, who was a dentist, uh, a book on creationism, evolution of a creationist. I
Okay.
think it was the title. And the second chapter of that was the only one that I could see that concerned evolution at all. So I read that, the second chapter, and then I wrote a flame of every single sentence in the entire second chapter. I wrote my friend back a 19,000 word rebuttal
Uh,
of
wow.
every sentence of the second chapter of Job Martin's book, explaining how this dentist has no fucking idea what he's talking about.
That sounds very in character for you. I would not doubt that. But yeah, I also work
I
the
had
night
the
job.
time.
Yeah. I'm currently working a night job now. That's really the only way for me to do that and go to school at the same time. But yeah, I have some gaps sometimes, and it's a physical job. It's not like an office job like you had, but I still have some gaps, during my break or sometimes on a slow days.
It's a
Where
funny
like,
thing. That's a part of my life that I really miss. I was a full time student and I'm working the night shift. I was a single father, and
mm,
so I mean, I just tried to make really efficient use of my time
exactly,
and
yes.
not do a lot of sleeping.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I do miss sleeping, like on a
I
timely
can remember a
fashion.
time when I and my friends would be sitting on the couch wishing that there was something worth watching on TV because we have no money, we've got nowhere to go, right? And nothing to do. And everybody I know that has shared this experience with me back in the past are all now living in the same sort of situation where we have to hit the ground running every day, right? And sleep is just sleep is a rarity. You know, we're all working ourselves as much as we possibly can be. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
funny that we ever had a moment of leisure in our distant past.
yeah. It seems to be coming up a lot more frequently as the economic situation goes as it is, and
Economic situation. Let's not even get started.
yeah, I don't want to go that route, but it's like I wanted to mention, I want to acknowledge its existence. But that's how I'm feeling. Yeah, I want to get to a point where I could do more leisurely stuff than having to work my brain all the time. But I just figured that if I'm gonna be busy all the time, I gotta fit in some creative time somewhere to just
Yeah.
it gives my brain that kind of a break from being 100% productive at all times. And so that's what kickstarted my fiction writing journey, I guess, because
Okay.
once you get a ball rolling too, like there's momentum to it, and it's like if I have a certain idea, I'm sure you're like this too. Like if you get a certain idea and it sparks something inside you, you want to follow it up. You want to
What I
follow.
end up doing is when I get those certain ideas, I start make notes to get back to, so that when I have a chance and whatever I'm doing at that moment, when I have a chance to, I can jump onto that and I put it on a list of
Okay.
things to do, so that as soon as I'm finished with one project, I can jump immediately onto the other. My problem is that I'm usually working on 5 or 6 projects at once.
Yep. Yep. I
And if
am
you
as well.
remember having a dial-up connection, it's a lot
Uh,
like trying to download multiple things at the same time. Everything's just taking too long. You're not getting anything done.
Yeah, yeah, like a
Yeah.
little tiny JPEG has to load line by line really slowly. Yeah, I've,
That's yeah,
I've
that's
heard,
kind of
I've
how I
heard
feel right now.
stories. It's a little bit before my time, but I've heard stories.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to let we shouldn't drone on too much longer. We've been a half hour.
Okay,
So I want to let you go ahead and close up with your promotion.
sure,
Okay.
sure. So yeah, this series is available on Amazon. Currently,
Links below.
this link should be linked below. It's available on Amazon. It's currently the only book in my series that's available on paperback. The rest of all my books are available on ebook. I'd like to be able to get them on paperback eventually, but struggling grad student and whatever.
Do
Um,
you do you narrate them?
I'm sorry.
Do you do audio book?
I'd like to. I'd like that's part of what's postponing them. I'd like to make time to record them myself. I think that adds an extra layer of authenticity for the reader. That's what it does for me.
I have found that audiobooks are really one of the problems I have with my brain keeps doing multiple things at once, so it's hard to read. I will
Yeah.
find that I've read paragraphs into something, realizing I've been thinking about something else the whole time I've been reading. So I have to go back and read the page again,
Yeah, yeah. I have
and
that
that
same
happens.
problem.
That doesn't seem to happen as badly with audiobooks. It's like I can drive, I can be on a road trip, be driving to Wisconsin or whatever, and I can have an audiobook in, and somehow that will ingrain a little bit better than if I just read it. And it's probably because the way that I am so multitasking that I will be listening to one thing while reading another thing and listening to somebody talk to me at the same time, and I'm trying to process all this information. It's
Yeah, that's how I do my reading. I'm usually at work. I'm able to do some independent work, and while I'm doing that, I'll be listening to an
I have
audiobook.
dear old friends that the only time I ever call them on the phone is when I'm driving, because that's the only time that I can't literally be reading.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, the struggle of a multitasker, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, but eventually I want all my books on audiobook just to help them, reach more people. Um, as an alternative, I do have most of my books, including the other books in this series, They're available for free at a site called bookbacker.com. I've sent you a link for that as well. And this site is part of a growing community of small and independent authors like myself, where writers and readers alike can support each other directly by reading each other's free work, critiquing, connecting, um, and even subscribing for exclusive content. I highly recommend it for people looking to connect and support smaller authors more directly. I wanted to put that option out there. That's available. A lot of my books are available on there for free. Um, and then I have my writing Discord. That's where I put most of my writing updates. So if you like to stay updated on the books that I'm writing and hopefully publishing, you can join there. I also post previews of my books through there as well. And then I can be reached specifically through Gabe Stroup Books at gmail.com. I believe I've sent you a link for that as well.
I only had the book for the link for the book, so make sure that you shoot
Okay.
me whatever other links you have, and I'll put them in the description.
Okay, I will. I will do that for sure. Yeah, I really appreciate you inviting me on here. You and I have actually met, like, I think it's almost 10 years ago at the
Oh, sure, I remember.
yeah, it's at the it's at the 2016 Reason Rally in Washington D.C. We met there, and I was still an undergrad back then. I said
So was
hello. Yeah, I know. And I do have a copy of your Foundational Falsehoods of Creationism on my bookshelf as well. It's been you and your whole channel and the broader Crevo community on YouTube has been a really formative part of my education, honestly.
You mentioned the 2016 Reason Rally, and I had to
Mhm.
track back in my mind to remember the event. So
Right, yeah. I guess it shows how like same event can trigger very different emotions in people.
yeah, I had a hell of a career for a bit there. I mean,
Yeah.
COVID really put the hamper on everything. But I mean, there was a time right as COVID was happening when I realized I was overworking myself, because I was on a paleo expedition in South Africa, and I'm trying to do my online courses while I'm doing that. Right, so I'm doing that as part of extra work for my degree plan.
Mhm.
But as soon as I get back from that, I realized my schedule was that the moment I get back, I was supposed to go to Austin for a rally, and then the weekend after that, I was supposed to be in Miami because I was supposed to be a speaker on a cruise ship in the Caribbean. So I was going to be doing a week at sea, doing all of that, and then as soon as I get back from that, I was supposed to be at a convention in Phoenix, and then the weekend after that, I was supposed to be at another convention, like in Philadelphia or something like that.
Wow.
And that there are midweek events, like there's a debate on this date, and there's this rally on this other date. And I remember thinking about, with this kind of a schedule, how the fuck am I doing this?
Yeah, yeah. Really, at that point, you're just letting momentum carry you. Like
Well, it was funny because when we come back with and COVID just shut everything down. And so there was a time when I was, for a whole decade, I was at a different convention, conference or rally or debate or whatever in a different state or country every month for a decade.
wow.
I was on 30 airplanes a year, every year,
Oof.
and it was just,
Sounds so.
I'm
awesome.
completely ill of flying, by the way, now. If it's,
Yeah, I would not blame you.
if it's someplace that's a 7-hour drive, I will drive.
Very reasonable.
Yeah.
I remember I still watch a lot of your old talks from those days, and they still punch pretty hard.
Thank you very kindly.
Yeah, yeah,
All right, we'll go ahead and close it up. It was Gabe Stroup.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right, check out the book in the description. And if you're not watching live, then there should be other links there to help you out as well. Remember to shoot me those as soon as you can.
Yep.
All right, Gabe, thank you for being on.
Thank you, Aaron. It was a pleasure.